Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all you hardworking UPSC aspirants joining us today. I'm your faculty for this specialized GS3 Economy Explainer session. Look, today we're absolutely tearing into a critical agricultural and economic issue that you need to master. We're talking about breaking India's fertilizer trap.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll cover defining the fertilizer trap, the policy and coordination failures behind it, restoring pulse cereal rotations, enhancing nutrient use efficiency, and finally, your key takeaway for the mains exam. All right, let's just dive straight into Section 1, defining the fertilizer trap and this vicious cycle of soil depletion.
Now, before we hit the textbook definition, I want you to really think about this analytical question. Why does India's national demand for fertilizers practically never saturate? I mean, even as our supply has steadily increased over the decades, the hunger for more just keeps growing. Why is that? Keep this conceptual hook in your mind.
Well, the answer lies in what we call the fertilizer trap. You see, inefficient and just outright excessive use of chemical fertilizers completely depletes the soil's organic matter. It ruins the soil's natural capacity to hold water and nutrients. And what does that do? It directly threatens crop yields. So farmers are pushed, really forced, into a corner where they have to add even more fertilizers next season just to maintain their baseline output. It's literally a self-destructing cycle.
And guys, the fiscal burden here is just massive. We're talking about a staggering 2 lakh crore rupees spent annually on fertilizer subsidies. But here's the kicker. Over 2/3 of that isn't even harvested as food. It's just lost to environmental pollution. Aspirants, absolutely make sure you quote this exact 2 lakh crore figure in your economy answers. It perfectly highlights the sheer magnitude of this economic wastage.
Okay, moving right along to Section 2. Let's look at the root causes. Policy and coordination failures.
So let's rewind a bit. Back in November 2017, the Honorable Prime Minister explicitly called for halving fertilizer usage within 5 years during his Mann Ki Baat address. It was a clear mandate. But fast forward to today, the data clearly shows us that thanks to severe interministerial and interdepartmental coordination failures, well, consumption has unfortunately only gone up. And the primary culprit behind this? It's the MSP skew. Look, the minimum support price is technically announced for over 20 crops, right? But actual on-the-ground government procurement is strictly limited to basically rice, wheat, and sugarcane. Naturally, our farmers are going to prefer the guaranteed income from those three. But ecologically, it's a disaster. These specific crops consume over 2/3 of all the urea in India. This completely destroys the traditional, much more sustainable pulse and legume crop rotations we used to rely on. Right, let's get into the solutions. Section 3, restoring pulse cereal rotations as a natural fix.
Consider this agronomic reality for a second. Cereal crops, they demand massive urea inputs and huge amounts of water. But pulses and legumes? They're practically magic for the soil. They naturally fix atmospheric nitrogen right into the ground. They require anywhere from 0 to maybe just 10% of the urea that cereals need. Plus, they are incredibly ideal for rain-fed areas, which is an absolute game changer when we're facing deficit monsoons. The comparative advantage is just striking.
Yet despite all these obvious ecological advantages, the real-world data is pretty shocking. 1.26%. That's it. According to the April 2026 data from our sources, the total sowing area for pulses grew by a mere 1.26% over the last year. And get this, that's despite a massive 11,440 crore rupee budget allocation. You really need to use this statistic to critically evaluate policy implementation in your GS3 paper.
Building on that, let's look at the Dalhan Atmanirbharta mission. Launched in October 2025, it ambitiously promised 100% procurement of tur, urad, and masoor at MSP. The target was a massive increase to 350 lakh tons per year. But that negligible 1.26% growth we just talked about, that points to some severe, glaring implementation gaps on the ground. In fact, it was so bad that the Supreme Court had to step in this March to officially recommend better execution.
Okay, let's move on to Section 4. How do we actually enhance nutrient use efficiency? We need technological and institutional fixes. To fix this mess, we have to fundamentally restructure how we apply fertilizers. Now pay attention because these steps are pure agronomic gold for your mains answers. First, we need to triple the recycling of organics, things like manure, compost, and biochar. Second, We must revise our agricultural recommendations to apply these organics strictly as the basal dose to genuinely rebuild soil health from the ground up. And third, we only apply chemical fertilizers as a top-up to meet any remaining shortfall. Seriously, remember to use those exact technical keywords, basal dose and top-up, when you're writing your exam.
Furthermore, we desperately need institutional reforms and smart, localized alternatives. The source data shows that simply investing in existing varieties, like specific rice germplasms, can literally double our nitrogen use efficiency. We need to stop getting distracted by fancy capital-intensive technologies like agricultural drones in places where the farmer just doesn't need them. And most importantly, to fix that intersectoral coordination failure we discussed earlier, the union government absolutely must revive the Interministerial National Nitrogen Steering Committee.
Finally, Section 5. Let's consolidate all of this into a solid mains exam takeaway. I'm going to leave you today with this highly provocative, totally realistic UPSC interview scenario. Imagine the panel asks you, how would you logically balance the urgent need for farmer income security through MSP with the absolute ecological necessity of breaking India's fertilizer trap? I want you to apply the structured knowledge we've discussed today, formulate your own balanced bureaucratic response, and keep studying hard. Thank you so much for joining today's explainer session at Rungta IAS Academy.